Hello. On the 16th of November, in the year of our Lord 2025, we saw the grand finals and conclusion of the APC2, short for Anonymous Players Cup, an Advanced Wars by Web live tournament organized by Humida. The event had 57 players, and there was a main event of the top 8 players. And in order to qualify for the main event, well, first of all, the champion from last year, Starflash, auto-qualified. Then there were 7 groups of 8 players each that played in a single elimination bracket to win their group and lock their spot in the main event. So when we reached the main event, that is the top 8, the players played in a single elimination bracket, but with a twist. They were given new identities and new names, and they had to play under these new names. And then no one knew who these players were, right? The casters didn't know, the players didn't know, the audience didn't know, and that created a very interesting experience because Advanced Wars by Web is unfortunately kind of has a smaller player base. So a lot of these players know each other, especially at the top, and they know each other's play styles. But when you add this extra wrinkle of these new identities, well, it kind of made the experience fresh and exciting, and then the audience and casters had fun speculating about who these different players were and trying to catch on different players' play styles, right? It's a very fun event. The other cool thing about the APC2 was that during the main event, Humida was streaming all the games, but every single matchup had a different guest co-commentator. So I actually got to be the guest co-commentator for the second set of day 1 of the quarterfinals, which is very exciting. I mean, did not deserve that. I shouldn't be breathing the same air as these top players, let alone commentating on their games, but it was a lot of fun, and I had an absolute blast. But each of the casters and the players, as well as the audience, submitted guesses on who they thought the various players were under these new names. And I was the only caster who got all 8. And someone in my comment section of one of my videos said, "You should make a video explaining how you got all 8. And I was like, all right, the chance to act like a pretentious know-it-all, sign me up, say no more. So I made a PowerPoint. But before we get into the PowerPoint, I just want you to know, first of all, there's going to be spoilers ahead. So if you haven't already, check out the APC2. I'm going to put some links in the description. And if you're going to watch any one set, you should watch the second set of the quarterfinal day 1, Hongjun Zifu versus Thunderbolt, because I was the guest co-commentator, and I am not biased at all. Not biased at all. That was the best set. Not biased. Totally kidding. You should watch every set. It was a banger. The whole event was an absolute banger, and the games were fantastic. Absolute cinema. All right, but the other thing, if you think that there is going to be any semblance of a rational thought in this PowerPoint, you are in for a surprise, because it's going to be so stupid. It's going to be so stupid. But I'm going to be done with the preamble here, and let's get right into this. Okay. So, first of all, we had Desperate Frankie, who was actually Starflash, and every single person got this right. You can't see these last 2 guesses because Humida's got the webcam covering it up. We call that pulling a Kessler with the stat graphs. But Voice of Akasha and Mansamusa both guessed Starflash. Every single person got it. Pretty obvious if you know Starflash's playstyle. It doesn't take a lot of time. Just Brawly just plays on intuition, like would be the bullet player of Advanced Wars. We need some Advanced Wars bullet. Can we make that happen? Okay. So that one is pretty easy. But now we go to Hongjun Zifu, who was actually Sonya the Superior, also known as a Master of Math. And a lot of people got this one. I commentated the Hongjun Zifu versus Thunderbolt set in the quarterfinals, and during that set, I mentioned multiple times to Humida that I was kind of keying in that Hongjun Zifu was Sonya's superior, and there were 2 main things. Number one was so Hongjun Zifu banned Catatonia instantly, which Humida also picked up on, and I was like, oh, we were both like, oh yeah, that's a Sonya the Superior move, because Sonya the Superior is very vocal about, I'm gonna ban Catatonia every single time. And then the other thing that keyed me in was Sonya Superior tended to just blob up units and make big blobs, and I've seen that in their games in the past, and I was like, yeah, I could see that, like, I don't know, it just checks out, right? And also my strategy here with guessing was to not overthink the room, right? My strategy was to underthink the room. I was just going to go with my gut. And, if my gut leads me astray, then I will accept the consequences. So, now we go to Black Knight, who is actually Azrael, also known as Astaroth. And not a lot of people got this one, but how I got this was a lot dumber than you're probably expecting. So you see, before the main event started, Humida released a video of all 8 players, kind of give their play style, some of their strengths and weaknesses, their favorite colors and COs, and the map picks and bans for the 7 players who had to go through the qualifiers. And Azrael's strength was early game, but weakness was the mid to late game. So in every single match in Black Knight's quarterfinal, Black Knight had an advantage out of the opening, but then struggled in the middle and late game. So I looked at this, and I looked at those games, how they played out, and I was like, it has to be Azrael, right? I didn't look. That's it. That's the entire logic, right? That I didn't look at anything else. I just looked at this, looked at those games, saw the opening advantage to middle game disadvantage pattern, and I was like, yeah, this checks out, right? It gets worse. Now we have Valkoinen Kuolema, who is actually Talos or Toulouse. I've heard people say both. I don't know which is correct. I'll probably say both in this video alone because I'm not consistent and can't commit. But not a lot of people got this, and I wonder what Semi-Original Guy's logic was because he got this one. But my logic, well, there is no logic, actually. This is completely devoid of logic. For you see, Humida was like, in his video that I showed you a slide of earlier, he was like, Talos really loves his artillery. He always opens up artilleries. He really likes them. And if you see a bunch of artilleries, that's Talos, right? So then I was watching the set, Valkoinen Kuolema versus Big Fella, and I saw this position right here. This is on a map called Misery, and the idea behind this is that you have this base in this airport, and this base in this airport kind of sandwiching this middle base right here, and obviously it's flipped on the bottom, but I cut off the bottom when I took the screenshot. But and usually you build artilleries over here on the outside. They can nestle behind these mountains and start bombarding that base, right? But I have never seen, and maybe someone did it in the qualifiers. I think I caught around 70 to 80% of the qualifier matches, but I admittedly did not get all of them. So maybe someone else did this in the qualifiers, or Talos did this. But I was like, only someone with an irrational, I've never seen anyone do this before. And I was like, only someone with an irrational love of artillery would build an artillery out of this middle base. I just don't see it. Maybe you put it here. I don't know. I was like, that has to be Talos. I've never seen anyone else build an artillery out of this base. So that's it. That's the entire logic, right? You thought there was going to be rational thoughts. You thought there was going to be some sort of intellect behind these guesses. No, right? They were guesses. Emphasis on guesses. Now we move to the big fella who was actually Chloe Box. And people did decently well on this one. And I think, I'm not entirely sure what a lot of people's logic was, but this one actually had some degree of rational thoughts for me. So when I was watching that Valkoinen Kuolema versus Big Fella set, I noticed Big Fella was going in for a lot of brawls. And Humida said in his video before the event that Chloe Box is a brawly player, has never seen Chloe Box in a stally match. But when I was watching that Big Fella set, the first one, I was like, oh, I could see Big Fella being Star Flash. Like, they're just a strong player, being very aggressive, but using still a lot of time, but just always brawling, always attacking. And then I saw the Desperate Frankie set, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's Starflash. It has to be." So that kind of narrowed it down, right? I'm like, "Oh, who else is a Brawly player?" Well, that would be Chloe Box. So that's how I got that one. So that's like a 2% rational thought there. Now we go to Thunderbolt, who was actually Advanced Noob, and a lot of players got this, but the casters really didn't. Only myself and Voice of Akasha got this. So I was commentating that Thunderbolt set. And the whole time, I could tell Thunderbolt was a very, very strong player. I mean, all these players are really strong, especially compared to me, right? Have to vacate the premises every time they walk in the room, lest they get a whiff of my peasant air. But at the same, to me, Advanced Noob's playstyle, just based on the qualifier matches, seemed kind of I don't know how to say it, flexible. Very hybrid, could play anything. So in the first game, Thunderbolt was blobbing up along with Hongja and Zifu, and they both were blobbing up. And then the second game was a little more brawly, but every single game, Advanced Noob, or that is Thunderbolt, was finding really good tactics and finding counterplay, but just made a couple mistakes that allowed Hongja and Zifu to win. And I was like, I think this player, and Humida was Advanced Noob's really prepared, a really strong live player. And I was like, I really think Thunderbolt's Advanced Noob, because they were in really tough positions that Hongja and Zifu was putting them in, and they were finding really good solutions, right? Just ultimately couldn't find all the solutions, but I was like, this is still a really strong player with, who has a very flexible play style, and that just spoke to me Advanced Noob. I don't know how to say it. This was 90% a guess, but at the same time, that's my logic, right? When I was watching Thunderbolt, I was like, this looks like Advanced Noob. But it's just my gut, right? I got lucky. And then we go to the final two players, Colonel Shrapnel, the secret identity of Days of Plague, and Systematic Joe, the secret identity of Dead FS. And I got extremely lucky on this, because this was a coin flip. I looked at the map picks; they were pretty similar. I looked at the games, and I was like, okay. I was like, here's my logic, right? And this is gonna sound so bad, so I'm gonna go back to Big Head here, so I can look you in the eye. This is so bad, but I was just looking at the qualifier matches alone, I was like, Dead FS seemed to have been playing better than Plague in the qualifiers, and Plague was still playing very well, but I was like, if it came down to a head-to-head, I feel like Dead FS has it, so I picked Dead FS as the player who went farther. That's it. That's the entire logic, right? That's going with my gut. Now, that sounds really bad. I'm not trying to throw shade at Plague. Plague would, if I played Plague in 100 matches of Live League Advance Wars, Plague would win 100 of them, okay? So it would, I have no chance. Not any shade right there. And also, my hair has two modes, Justin Bieber and Porcupine, and that was very distracting. Okay, so I'm not trying to throw shade, right? Plague probably has better Advanced Wars, well, definitely has better Advanced Wars skill, and probably has better hair than I have. But at the same time, I was like, I just felt like Dead FS did really good in the qualifiers and looked really strong, so I just picked Dead FS as the player who went farther. That's it. That's the entire logic. So that's it, right? That's all 8 players. We got 8 out of 8, 90% luck, 10% gut instinct, and 0% rational argument. So I hope you enjoyed this really dumb video, and I'll see you in the next one.